All right, so lateral movement. For those that are watching the recording, you missed a lot of cool stuff, but we got us restarted, so we're going to go ahead and move on forward. All right, so I'm in startup world now. Most of my career, was about the first half of my career was doing stuff, actually implementing networks and securities and stuff like that. And then I fell into being a consultant, and where I told people what to do. And then fell into vendor world. I've worked for IBM and Bit9, Carbon Black, and now work for a startup, Drawbridge Networks. And what we do at Drawbridge Networks is, and I won't go into our product so much, but that we help secure internal networks. And so my research and my knowledge in this topic has greatly increased in the last 2 years that we've been running this company. And so that's where my focus is knowing how these hackers are actually traversing the network, and what are new tools out there that could change the game at any point. Go tech. All right. And I also think that this stuff is fairly boring, especially after dinner, so I've inserted cats. So there you go. I saw like two girls hands. Oh, cats! All right, good. I'm here. I don't have to play with my phone. I can watch the cats. All right, everybody's got to start with kill slide. This shows that I'm from vendor world, because we always got to talk about the kill chain and where we fit into it. So I think the kill chain is a little bit outdated. I mean, it has been around for quite a while. I basically, the kill chain, if you're not familiar with it, is basically it was a Lockheed Martin. They got attacked, and they said, hey, this is kind of like how other people are getting attacked. And they basically wrote a paper and said, let's put some words to this so that we can talk together about the stages of an attack. Where an attacker is going to do some external recon, they're going to then figure out how to get in, they're going to deliver their delivery however they decide to do it. If you listen to the FBI guys, 90% of it's phishing. And then what's interesting is the initial thing that happens on your machine is an exploit, and then they install something. And if you don't know the difference between that, it's good to know. Zero-day exploits or any type of vulnerability exploits are just the first door, and then what they basically do is then download. They say, oh, you're running Windows 7, this version, this hardware. I've got a special package for you out on the internet, and I'm going to download the exact type of Trojan that works for your machine. And then this kill chain, it goes to command and control, where now that endpoint then calls home somewhere, and then they take some action. My work in the field has led me to believe that we need to kind of put some more labels on this and talk about how it's really happening nowadays. So that was kind of like classic malware stuff. Spam out a bunch of stuff. Maybe it's targeted. You're only going for one company, but that in general, any type of exploit kit that you land or a root access Trojan is going to then call home. Well, everybody's trying to look for that CNC signature going back out, so let's not necessarily have a CNC. Let's land somewhere and have a handful of those communications just use normal channels to then have backdoor access. There's so many very obvious channels, Twitter, Facebook, anything that's over SSL and looks like it's appropriate is very hard to see from a defensive standpoint. So my suggestion is more along once they've exploited, they're using an exploit, which is, if it's a 0 day, they're used it up, right? You no longer got a 0 day, you've got a known exploit because you've just used it in the wild. But then you try to gain persistence, because you can download and install anything, but it's got to stick around. And this is a lot different than the narrow thought of just saying, here's a malware that's going to put up in your startup parameters or hide itself in WMI, which they still kind of do that. But then there's a lot more options, right? There's BIOS and there's other ways of keeping persistence. And so just installing a malware is not a particular point that you can then work on, figure out a control to block that. But persistence in general is a broader thing now. And then they go for lateral movement. And so we use a code word in my marketing speak, because I hate the word APT, Those originally just meant to say China. It was, couldn't say China, so they said APT. And now it's, this describe all sorts of things that will scare executives into spending money. And so I use the word sophisticated threat. Okay, this is somebody that is got more than just they've got a half-baked plan. Maybe it's state-sponsored, maybe it's not. Russian Federation, Panama Group, but they've got more than just a spray and pray type of approach. And so the sophisticated attacker, the main difference I pull into that is that they're going to land and move on, while most malware you deal with out there just lands on your laptop, tries to steal stuff off your laptop. Okay, and we've seen things like crypto where expand beyond just encrypting local people's PCs to now, oh, I'm in a healthcare network. Let's go out and find all the good stuff. And so that's that lateral movement. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. So an example of lateral movement. So marketing PC, marketing laptop guy, everybody knows that marketing is a 2-drink minimum anyway. So, they're a nice prime target for any type of adversary to get in and just land on their laptop. And they go from their conference, they come back to the office, or they VPN in, and now they're connected to the internal network. And so how do I get around? As I start looking around, and I'm able to then get to the sales PC. Maybe it had the same local administrator / password for its local account, and I was able to hop over to yet another just bland PC. But then that PC gets have problems with it, and so IT comes in and remotes to their machine, and they log in and they fix it. Now I have IT guys, username and password. I get on their laptop, and now I can escalate privileges, wait till they go and get domain admin, and hop onto the domain controller, and then everything else is easy. All right. So to me, there's 3 types of recon. So now we're moving into post-exploitation. So we're there, and now I got to do recons first thing. Where am I at? What do I know? And what do I need to do to get there? So to me, there's 3 types of recon. There is passive information gathering. Passive means that there is basically virtually zero way of showing up on the radar of the person you're attacking, or company you're attacking. You've got the semi-passive, where you're going to do normal things to other systems, but it shouldn't show up. So passive would be something like reading the registry. Semi-passive would be like doing a DNS query. Okay, so I'm going to reach out and do a DNS query. May set off alarms, but probably won't, because it looks fairly normal. And the last one is active information gathering. And somebody was talking to me, is what do you mean by active? I said, well, really, I only think of people do active, attackers that do active, is the poor entry-level pen testers that go out there and say, hey, I've got a remote, I'm going to load up Nmap and scan the entire network. Go! Oh, look at all this data I've got right now. But then, of course, they light up a whole bunch of stuff. There's points to do active information gathering, and we'll go through that. All right, so you've got remote shell, now what? All right, so here's just a kind of a dump of a whole bunch of different things that you can do, and most of these are either passive or semi-active. And being able to collect information, saying, where am I going there? Now this is a list of stuff I do. I forgot to pull it out. But anybody knows what a rubber ducky is? Rubber ducky. All right, tell us what a rubber ducky is.
It's basically a USB device that you plug in, and it simulates a keyboard.
That's right. Well, it looks like a USB key. You plug it into any machine, and it doesn't show up as a USB drive by default. You can have it do that, but you probably don't. And anyway, it shows up as a keyboard device, and then is able to then run a series of commands, and then collect that data. And then the most common uses I use it is then I just send it off to an SSH server somewhere that I control. So I can just go plug this in. That takes about 15 seconds. Pull it out, and on the server is a zip file with all this information. So again, you can do the same if you get a remote client. Is that you run this, you can script this all up so that you can start looking around, and this is a great basis of moving forward. So here's an example of a DNS query, right? Yep, DNS query that is basically to find all the domain controllers. Hey, if you want to find, start looking around, tell me what's on your network. You can then run this command here. It's looking for a query type server. Hey, Microsoft makes it easy for us because Microsoft wants you to run DNS on your domain controller, so it can do all this DNS plus, right? All this extra stuff that Microsoft does. So that's one way of a semi-active attack can collect information. The fact that people are using any type of DNS tool, most of those DNS tools are not looking for information gathering attacks like this. Dan Bala was, but poor Dan Bala. And so I said they had the right idea, but the company didn't have the right idea, I guess. But they had the good technology. Right, so here's another DNS queries that you can make. It's called SPN. They are special. It's like the directory of services that is provided, and if they are basically a Microsoft application, they announce themselves on this. It's kind of like DNS query, like where is Site Protector? And if you can query that, you can find Site Protector, the machine or machines that. Oh, Site Protector. Sorry, that's the root beer talking. What's the Microsoft web like wiki and all that? SharePoint. See, I knew it started with an S. Need to drink more water here. SharePoint. So yeah, if you're looking for the SharePoint, that's a lot of good data is up there. It's usually HR stuff and all sorts of policies and probably IT material too. And so if you can find the share, you can actually query for SharePoint directly from DNS. You don't have to wait till the user goes and visits the SharePoint to see see the browser history or anything. You can just query this, and it will tell you where those are. Outlook or Exchange servers. Most Microsoft products will create SPNs, and a lot of other enterprise software will also create SPNs. SPA, several different of those enterprise level apps, because they use that for load balancing and all sorts of other information exchange. So several different ways of getting SPNs are listed there. All right, so now we've done a little bit of recon. We've looked around. We've kind of got a feel for the network and how it's going. We haven't net scanned, so we at least know the IP range that this laptop is on, and we have a good idea of where domain controllers are. If there are different networks, then you can start seeing that there's probably some segmentation inside this inside your target. And but what am I going to do now? I've just got Joe the sales guy's username and password. It's probably not going to get me very far. Definitely won't get me to my domain admin. So what we're going to do is the steps to take to get privilege, to escalate my privileges, and to get to domain admin. First question, I need to have this at the top, is do you really need domain admin? If you're a pen tester, what is your goal? Your goal is to help the customer learn where their mistakes are, and so you might be targeting specifically, a specific area of the network, and so you're going to be looking to how to get to maybe a database or something like that. You can use these methods, but most people say, I need to go get domain admin. It's like, hey, yeah, I've got root, but you don't necessarily always need to get that to get the goods. But general steps are looking for missing patches. So patches are installed, and where is patch history on a Windows computer? Anybody?
Tim?
Where?
Tim? The big long crazy name folder on the C drive?
Yes, but where can you get a list of what patches are installed on an individual PC? Huh?
Software.
Yeah, add remove. Yeah, control panels, add remove software. That's just a registry key that you can query and get every single KB. It's like a KB number, I think. And so you get a list of those and see what's installed. And then you can look at the Microsoft's website, see what's missing. And if you're using Metasploit, that gives you an idea of look at what exploits you have available and what you could use. So there might be an exploitable hole somewhere that you can find. The automated install answer files. I love this one for things like any of the bare metal tools where they're stamping out laptops, and new employee gets this new laptop and it's all built by this magical tool. Sometimes those magical tools leave a text file on your endpoint with a bunch of passwords. So that's a fun one to find. Get saved passwords from group policy. I think I've got a slide that goes into this a little bit further, but the idea is that in group policy you can do things that require a username and password. And if you're stupid enough to do that, it's kind of like putting that in a command line batch file, because all of the group policies are cached locally and you can get those out. And yeah, I do have a slide on it. You're going to love how they encrypt their passwords in group policy. Then there is a registry there, always install elevated. This is, if you run an MSI file, you can, usually prompts you, that UAC prompt, right? It says, this requires administrative privileges. You don't have them. Please type in a user account that has them. Or if you, are already running as an admin, you can then just say yes. If you can, if that is set to always install elevated, and you need root access to get this, you can't just change it here, but you look there, and it says, hey, that's equals 1. You could just run an MSI file, and that will run as administrator. So then you just download your rat tool or whatever you want, and you just as package as an MSI, run it, and it'll run as admin and give you that, give you a shell back running as a system account. And then I've got this Hail Mary here. This is basically just going through looking through all of a bunch of files, and looking for anything that say password. I mean, people create text files, and maybe you'll find one. All right, so now we're stepping up. So all of those, the basic ones, we're just kind of looking around, see if they got a little sticky on their monitor. I mean, you're looking for the basic stuff there. Next step is looking for vulnerable Windows services, and this kind of goes back to getting the patches that they've got installed, and then you can also enumerate the services that is running on that endpoint and see if you've got any vulnerabilities there. And then, and I'm going to go through each of these. There's DLL hacking by basically doing hijacking by loading up a DLL before, a DLL that's expected to be loaded, but you loaded up before it. And I'll show you how that works. And then you can also replace executables with an existing scheduled task. And I've got I got a screenshot on each of these here. So this is hacking a service. I'm not sure how well you can see it, but basically the idea is you are basically which one is this? So we are so this is hacking a service. The service, some of the services are not secured by default. It's kind of, and this is one that you can always look for, is the UPN host. And what you can do is you can actually edit the registry to change the properties of that service, to insert your own executable, and then you start and restart the service. And so this is, the red screen, or kind of red screen over there, is doing from remote, and but is using the SC commands. And then we're running that the netcat over here. And so that so once I restarted the service, now command.exe pops up and runs netcat. Now you've got a backdoor open. That's running as service. So you got all those different methods. All right. So since I apparently don't have a slide on this, so make sure one more time. I guess not. What happened on the slide? But in essence, so the group policy thing, that's what I wanted to talk more about, make sure, because that's what's funny. So group policy, Microsoft encrypts it, encrypts the password in the group policy thing. Microsoft published the key for some reason, And then so you can basically just get that key off of TechNet's website and decrypt the secure password. So if you happen to be in a group that you talk to your 8 Active Directory folks, then you can tell them about this and tell them to not do any type of group policy work that requires them entering in a username and password to execute on it. So because then that's cached locally and can be used to escalate privileges. All right. So there's all those steps, right? I just went through like 2 or 3 slides of them. But if you if we get into now the PowerShell hacking world, all of those steps can be automated. Every single one. The last 2 or 3 slides on privilege escalations. And this is a part of. I know it's a part of PowerSploit, but I'm sure it's packaged with a couple of other tools. And so basically, it goes through this list, just it goes through that checklist and looks for all of those things automatically for you. And like I said, I ran it on my local machine, and the insecure services was I had like 12 or 20 of them, where if an attacker were to get on my laptop, they could then change the properties of that service and then run something as running on a service account. So, all right, so let's talk about PowerShell, because I mean it's a very, very great tool. Microsoft handed to the hackers a couple of years back. I was working for Bit9 at the time. Bit9 does make sure that only the things that are allowed to run are able to run, and then PowerShell just kind of backdoored all that. And you could do anything the hell you wanted in PowerShell, and there's very little tracking. They said, oh well, if you run this. Look, it can be audited if you turn this thing on. It's like, that's true. But if you just open up a PowerShell window, cut and paste from like Notepad into this and then run, it goes, and there's no kernel interaction whatsoever to say other than, PowerShell. The PowerShell window was launched, and it's really hard to turn that off. So there's some other things that we can do with PowerShell, some of which I've got a particular slide. So if the target is running something like Bit9 or emit or anything that looks at execution, you don't want your executable, your hacking code to show up on disk, because as soon as it hits disk, it can be scanned. And so you keep it all in memory, and I'm pretty sure I've got a slide on that, unless it mysteriously disappeared like the others. And then you can download and execute code from those systems. You've got all this access, right, and to Win32.net. So you can make a very extensible tool that you want to build. The built-in remoting, you don't even have to have a backdoor built-in. If you've got a customer that's already helped you along and has enabled remoting because it's convenient, then it's that simple to run those. Yes.
So do you think that application whitelisting doesn't have its use anymore?
No, not at all. It's just not as infallible. It used to be pretty rock solid.
Yeah.
But and since then, Bit9 is now called Carbon Black Protect. But that has come up with other memory mapping tools to do it. And PowerShell v5 has some more security stuff in it, which it leverages. And we'll talk about PowerShell v5 in a second. All right, so obviously, command.exe sometimes can be blocked on a lockdown system, but the Microsoft guys always want to run PowerShell scripts, and really, Microsoft really makes you run it. If you go and look at any of the, I used to be in MCSE, and you say, I want to go do this stuff, and if you've been around for a while, in my day it was ADSL, ADSL. Yeah. It was it was kind of like the back in the batch days. That's the way we accessed objects inside the directory. And now I think it's a hub, but all the code that they show and they train people on in Microsoft training classes is all PowerShell. So basically, there's no just turn PowerShell off. It's like, well, then you really handicap the IT guys, because they're there to manage and run your business, and they're saying they can't do their job anymore. So no, it's not a appropriate answer unless you're a very small shop, and Microsoft stuff is a minority. basically. Most corporations, that's not the case. All right, so, and then many, I wrote that one up. That's my political answer. I can say, hey, Bit9 can't do that. But that, I didn't want to put it in the slide. Still a great tool. I would still put Bit9 or Carbon Black in your arsenal. All right, so V5. So Microsoft said, okay, I hear you. We're going to put in some more stuff. There's script rock logging, so that you can actually see get a capture of the script that is being run. So that's a great tool. You turn that on. You get the system-wide transcripts. That means that if you're, one PowerShell scriptlet can then do multiple things to multiple hosts, and what you want to do is be able to put all that into a single transcript. And so that's a great logging tool that you can then also use AppLocker to help control PowerShell. I don't know too much about that one, but the next one I do. So AMSI is basically Microsoft's little anti-malware tool, and now is integrated in with PowerShell, and basically allows for it to scan your scripts and make sure you're not doing anything that is contained all in these slides. So doing running things like PowerSploit or Mimikatz is caught using this. But then there's that tweet. You probably can't write that all down, but that tweet breaks AMSI, so it's down. It's a reflection attack to bypass AMSI, and yes, I love code that fits into a tweet. It reminds me of old the DCMA when we broke DVDs. They tried to arrest anybody with the code.
I kept that JPEG.
Yeah, I had a T-shirt on with it. I was close to getting a tattoo, but I wasn't one of the ones that got a tattoo with exploit code on it. I did travel internationally later, and so I probably would have. I would have been the guy to get the strip search going into Russia or something. Yeah. You bringing in code? All right, so here's how you do remote access with no hit to disk. Okay, we can use Mesploit, or we can use PowerShell shellcode injection. But basically, the idea is that you're going to create your payload. All right. I'm sorry, it's not either or. First step is you're going to create your shellcode in Mesploit. So basically, whatever you want to run, whatever exploit kit you want to fire up, you create that in Mesploit using these commands, and then and it's basically in this example we're basically going to be doing a simple backdoor. That's what we want to get running as service. And then there's the shellcode injection. So by those two commands in PowerShell there. I can then have all of my PowerShell, PowerSploit, all the other tools that I want running in memory, and I can invoke Mimikatz and invoke shell check and all of those tools that I want, and avoid detection by both the Microsoft malware suite and any other type of disks monitoring tool, virus scan, Bit9, anything like that. So this still works. Tested it about 2 days ago. So I got a patched up Windows box here, and I'm still able to get by. All right. So I've mentioned PowerSploit a couple times. So here are some of the features that it comes down with. I like time screenshots. That's always a fun one to just record somebody's machine at random times. Got the gold keystroke locker, and there's that reflective PE injection. That's to get around the antivirus code. But we're going to talk specifically about Mimikatz, which is one of my favorite tools that I've come across. I think it's probably since like. Back Orifice. Does anybody remember Back Orifice?
Oh, you kidding?
Yeah. It was the Cult of the Dead Cow.
Yeah, Cult of the Dead Cow, 1999.
Yeah. I called it, I was doing actually I was just out selling intrusion detection software, and we put it at this one little tiny bank. came back a week later to show, look how much stuff it caught. And I found out the security manager, security director there, was infected with back orifice, and it was only like 2004, 2005.
Yeah, well, that was 5 years after it was released.
Yeah. I actually used it. I worked for a smaller shop, and I used it as my management tool for a while. It was, better than DNC. But Mimikatz is anybody here know Mimikatz? Got 1 or 2 hands? Okay. So Mimikatz is a tool that directly attacks credentials. So we're all talking about getting credentials here. It does it in a number of ways. And of course, the final way being, grabbing hashes to do brute force. But there's, as I sit on panels and talk about, encryption and all this stuff, is that it's never, I never see a whole lot of success with brute force. That's kind of like the last, case. And yes, if you use the right, use the right algorithm, then yeah, that will be impossible. So yeah, use the right algorithm. But most of the hacking and cracking that goes on is the implementation. And so what it does is that there's several different types of Windows improvements that basically makes Mimikatz run and can steal all sorts of any locally cached credentials. So fire it up here, and so I'm looking, I got my net group member, I'm looking for domain admins, and then I just, once I've got my PowerShell set up, I just invoke Mimikatz, and I'm going to dump creds. So one command, and instantaneously I got back and I looked at it and said, "Crap! There's my password." I don't know how to work. So I specifically changed my password for this screenshot so that I wasn't sharing my super elite password. But there it is. And this is with getting it through what's called TS package. TS package is basically it's an LSAS helper app that is part of Windows, and is pretty much the majority of uses that I've seen this in is got it through TS package. Now, I've got a bunch of links in here that if you do download my slides, you can find it, but I'll have to remember the site. But, there's a website out there. Go through and say, here's what you can do to turn off TS package, right? And then, like, you can tell, it's one of those web pages that it shows all its edits and everything. Oh, wait, never mind. Microsoft has enhanced it yet again, and the above commands will still not block Mimikatz from getting this. So here's how you audit it. So basically what they're saying is that Mimikatz can pretty much, if it is a locally cached credential, Mimikatz can crack it in minutes, or seconds. It's not a, it just flashes right up. So if you're going through this as part of an exercise, you just look, so I didn't get domain admin. Nobody is logged into this machine that has domain admin. So why don't I go and just create a scheduled task to run Mimikatz every time, every day, every hour, whatever. And maybe break the machine a little bit and see. I have IT, dial in, and you get at least an IT admin or IT guy's username and password. Hop on this machine, do this again, and wait until you get a domain admin privilege. There's lots of ways to use Mimikatz. If you're in, if you're a pen tester, it's got to be one of your tools. It's the best thing out there. If it's if you guys are defending, you can just Google defending against Mimikatz and see what you can do and what you can't do, and so you can monetize the risk, right? Be able to communicate. We've got a major risk here, and so maybe we shouldn't You know how all of our IT guys right now, they only have one account, and you know it's a domain admin, so maybe we shouldn't have a regular user account and a domain admin account. And, you know, everybody laughs, but if you work for different size companies, it's just one of the things you just can keep meaning to do it. You know, it's best practice. Exactly. Yeah, use the same password. Other ways to get domain admins is that basically if you're able to get physical access to their sysvol volume, that is where you can pull out and crack that. That's more of a brute force attempt. There's a specific exploit there that will get to domain controller. And then we get into the other thing that Mimikatz is famous for that I haven't done a whole lot with, but I basically get the concept is that if you're familiar with Kerberos, Kerberos works in a ticket system. Basically, you go and authenticate, you get a certificate or a ticket, and that is good. You pass that around as you go around the network. You say, hey, here's my credentials. I have credentials. And well, you can forge those credentials using Mimikatz. So you can create a golden ticket that makes it look like you have already authenticated as such user, and you can go and ask for resources. And you can do this without even touching the domain controller in different attack configurations. And so the golden ticket, and there's also a silver ticket attack, is a pretty important attack to defend against. Some usual behavioral stuff will catch some of that. But it's something, if you have any type of protection over your domain controllers, go back and see if they protect against golden ticket attacks. Because a lot of them don't. Microsoft, I don't know which purchase it was, but I was looking at the MSDN the other day, and they actually have their own, I think it's called Microsoft Security Analytics Server, and I was like, what is this? And it's actually it's kind of like an IDS, or maybe it's IPS, but at least an IDS for domain controllers that you can buy from Microsoft. And it didn't seem cheap, but it actually, their slides start off with the golden ticket attack. That's their, to show how awesome their security analytics software is. So I would suggest looking into that if this is part of your wheel whale. Hey, I said that. Wheel whale. Well. All right. And then if you happen to get physical access to a domain controller, then you can just run Mimikatz on the domain controller and it will dump the cache. So basically, if you do a session hijacking and you're able to get onto RDP over an existing port, you still wouldn't have the credentials. So if you get it physically on it, then you can run Mimikatz and dump it. All right. So I'm couple more slides here, talking about a couple other tools other than PowerSploit. We got PowerShell Empire. The notability of this is a lot of the same stuff that's in PowerShell or PowerSploit, except that it's easily packaged as a rat tool, and so it has a little bit more automation into packaging up. Kind of PowerSploit's kind of here's all the tools, and so these other ones, build the tools in a different way to make it a little bit easier to use for specific things, that this is built to more as like malware specifications. It has a encrypted command and control. When you run things like Mimikatz and other tools, it parses the output and grabs usernames and puts them in like a database. So that as you connect to all of your endpoints that you've attacked, it saves all of those so that you can just reuse them later. Instead of having to cut and paste and have Notepad over here or a VI in another window, it'll just keep up with all of them there. And then you can sit there and say, log in using domain admin and rotate whatever domain admin is. It's great little. It's like, wow, this is like really advanced stuff, but it's basically using all the same PowerShell underneath the port. Nishang. This one is good for, it's got a good component on it to check to whether or not you're running on some type of hypervisor or in the cloud. Another good one that this has that PowerSploit doesn't have in the box is to be able to remove an update. It's got different options on it and how forcefully or how quietly you want to try to remove an update. And I like this one too, this invoke credentials fish. So you got this endpoint, you're trying to get access, and maybe it's an IT guy that has this or that. You can prompt up that little window there. Just at, random times. What's he gonna do? Oh, shoot, okay. I'll log back in. Done. There's your clear text. Password. Yeah, no. I was just like, well, that seems obvious. Why didn't we start there, right? It's all about the user.
That's a detriment to like cloud-hosted applications, off-site exchanges, because constantly you're being prompted either from a browser, sometimes or from an email server to re-input your credentials.
Yep.
So this is just second nature to people.
Oh, yeah.
It's popped up, just popped in.
Yep. That's the idea, is that to make it easy for the attackers. Microsoft's really good at doing it. PS attack. So this one, if I'm going in and I know that they have the Microsoft anti-malware suite, or they've got a decent scanner tool and whatnot, this allows me to build build this as a malware with permeated hashes, so that every time I build it, I've got a new hash, got a new package, and then it contains so that basically you can wrap all of these other tools into one big package, and you can deliver your payload that way. So again, remember exploit versus persistence is that you build this and then you fish, and this is what they download. And there was one that just told I was at another conference up in New York earlier this week, and this was just presented. So I haven't had a lot of hands-on use with it, but I just love that they're a lot of times post-exploitation tools are kind of dated about 2 or 3 years ago when kind of Mimikatz came out and PowerSploit and all of those just kind of between like 5 and 3 years ago. So this one was released this week or will be soon. NCC group, hacking group, or security group out of the UK, and lots of different features there. And again, I've got the link for their tool. But if you just remember Red Snarf, you can. I don't know how many Red Snarfs are. I don't know if that's dangerous to Google or anything. It might be one of those blue oatmeal things, blue waffle things. So that's pretty much all I have. I've got some references here, so when the slides get shared, you can go out and see that I basically stole all of this material from somebody else. But I did it as I. But you look at the thing and it says it does this. No, it doesn't do that. Hey, it does do that. All right, and so if Vice President can get by with doing some of these tools, I think that they're pretty straightforward. And so, great for proof of concepts to show your Active Directory folks how vulnerable they are, and you can be the new red team leader just by downloading a couple of these tools and screenshotting and seeing, well, is this supposed to be this way? So, questions?
How do you keep up?
How do I keep up?
Yeah, with all the, it's just like a fire hose.
Yeah, so I do the speaker cert thing, and so, I'm hearing, I get to hear a lot of this stuff at different conferences. DEF CON is kind of like, that's where everything gets kind of announced and updated. Old tools get updated with new features and things like that. But mainly, it's like I said. So I'll give, let me see if I can do a 60-second commercial here, and I won't bleed your ears. So Drawbridge Networks, our tool basically is what we're meant to solve is kind of securing your internal network. We do it by it's an agent-based network control, both network visibility and control solution. So you think right now you're getting most of your network data from network devices. They can only see so much because they're on the network. So there's, TCP layer 3 and 4, and maybe you can conjoin that with some other stuff, but we run directly on the endpoint, so we collect things like users, process, and whatnot. And so we can do things like segmentation on the wire, just like instant segmentation, be able to say, IT guys are not, or marketing guys, and anybody that's not a database admin is not allowed to connect to my databases. Only authenticated database admins who are in this AD group can communicate to my to my databases. And so we're always looking at, since we're telling our customers, we're helping them solve the lateral movement issue, and that you need to have some type of solution for when they get past everything else, because they will eventually. This research is not only just interesting for me being a geek and a hacker, but that it's fueling my business right now. I got to be on top of it and be able to say, but what about this? And I can say, I know what you're talking about, and we can't fix that. So, most of these things I can in demos I can show how our tool makes this stuff really obvious, and the idea is that segmentation is the best practice for internal attacks. While this stuff evolves, there's going to be new ways of getting around and hopping around. Is that if you are if you segmented up your network, it doesn't matter that, hey, I've owned this guy, he's on this segment. He's on this VDI, he's on this whatever, and there are no instances will that attacker be able to get to the databases unless they are able to get to a database host. And by that time, they've hopped it a couple times and hopefully have created enough noise for the security to detect, or our tool to detect. Yep.
Will these slides be posted?
I don't know. I will, after this, I'll put it on PDF and put it on Twitter. So there's my Twitter right over there, Xavier Ashe. So I'll have them available for download, but I'm sure that the conference will collect all the presentations and make them available. Yes?
When you speak, it sounds like humans are behind keyboards doing these lateral movements. To what extent do you think it's robots that are just doing the whole thing?
Well, to me, the only time I see that now is with the they're encrypting your stuff, the ransomware.
Yeah.
So ransomware. So there's this great article Intel produced about the maturity of ransomware has gone from just steal your individual PCs to get inside of a network, find the backups, figure out which backup tool you're using. Then you know where in the registry to go to find where those backups are going, and to lateral move into those. Most of these take a little bit more, gray matter to just to ingest the information and then make a decision on where to go, because you don't want to be detected. And so the idea is that I think there's still people behind it, but I think that ransomware is probably the most advanced in where it comes to that level of automation. So, yeah, to find out that your backups are encrypted too. I feel for those companies. I mean, they're smart enough to even do backups. So, all right, is that it?
Thank you.
Oh wait, we got one more. Go ahead.
Do you know Tanium? If so, how do you feel about it?
Tanium?
Yeah.
So Tanium is. Have you heard of Big Fix? Yeah, heard of Big Fix. So Big Fix was the first product. It got acquired by IBM, so that was one of my tools. I know a lot about it. So the CTO. Anyway, somebody in Tanium was tired of being an IBMer and was in Big Fix, created Tanium. Both of them kind of work on the same idea, is that it is a question answer thing that you've got an agent on your endpoint that can ask questions and answer questions very quickly, and it can scale very well. And so with doing that, I can collect all sorts of type of security information, and then from their console I can go and actually go request even more specific security information by doing that. They can also set settings for compliance and other type of security things and respond. And so for what it does, is if you just got to know what the tool is for, it does good at a job, which is very quickly asking questions. It's still scan based. Even if that scan is like once every 20, 30 seconds, it's still scan based. So you can't say it's like in line with anything. Like, for example, our software sits in the TCP stack, so it's actually in line with stuff, while Tanium is just, it's a very quick search engine, basically. But yeah, it's a great little tool. I've also had lots of friends that, because I knew all the team in BigFix. Ooh, Tanium, they're a new company. Yeah, I'll get more money. I'll go work over there. About 3/4 of them have already come back to BigFix. And, I know either they like the comfort of IBM, which, or they ran out of fun over at Tanium. So that's something I'll throw into the mix.
Thanks a lot.
Well, thanks, guys.